Hello, and thanks for checking out my video. My name is James Harkins. I'm a SuperCollider user for about 20 years and composer and improviser using my own live coding framework. Lately, I was integrating an extension called VSTPlugin into my setup, and I thought this would be a nice chance to kind of introduce VSTPlugin and help people to get started with it. So I will go through basically two main sections. One to introduce VSTPlugin in general, and the other to talk about my specific usage of it. So I guess, the first question is what is VSTPlugin? VSTPlugin is an extension. There's a version for SuperCollider and a version for Pure Data. It makes SuperCollider and Pure Data into a VST host, so it runs the plugin within the SuperCollider or Pure Data audio engine, and the audio is integrated with everything else you're doing in SC or PD. The website is a Git website at IEM. IEM is an institute out of Germany. When you get here, it looks like this. And there's a lot of programmer type stuff, but the important thing you want to do is go to Releases. And it's a little bit slow. So there's a VSTPlugin squiggle, which is the Pure Data external, and then there's another one for SuperCollider. Make sure you download the right one. If you download the Pure Data one and try to use it with SuperCollider, obviously that won't work. Anyway, here's the place to go. Get iem.at/pd/VSTPlugin. There's a little dash in there, and then Releases. Okay, that's the main place to go. Okay, VSTPlugin is a large and complicated object, and when you look at the help file, you might get really confused by a lot of different methods and messages you can send to it. And it took me a while to sift through it. Basically, I've boiled down kind of the very basic quick start version. Comes down to these 7 steps. It will be similar, not exactly the same, similar in Pure Data. So let's just walk through it. So what I'm going to do is just open up the VST, make a very quick patch, save it, and then be able to use it later. So everything, the VST is actually controlled through a unit generator called VSTPlugin. So this needs to be running in a synth. Here is kind of an outline for this. I put in a little envelope so that I can release it nicely. You don't really have to. The main thing is just that the VSTPlugin instance goes to an out. That's about it. We're not using the synth arguments to control the plugin. So let's go over to SuperCollider. Now here is where I've been developing stuff. We'll look at some of that later. But if I run that, now I have my I have my synth defs. So let me make a synth. I'm going to I'm going to use this is actually a mixer because I'm using these mixers to record. So this will just make sure that you can hear what I'm actually playing. Okay, so now I have a synth. So that should be fine. That's step one. It's if you look at the help files, it may take you a while to figure this out. It's actually pretty simple. Okay. Second step, look for plugins. Right here, well, the server's already booted, but let's do this. VSTPlugin search. Now, In this case, it went very, very fast because I've already searched. The first time you do this, it will kind of like your DAW. It will try to open all the plugin files. This might take a little time. Just be patient. At the end of it, you will get some lines kind of like this. Some of these Carla ones are kind of it says blacklisted. I'm not sure what that's about. It doesn't matter for today, but you will find, so all of these these are plugins you can use. I'm looking at instruments, so we will look at these. After searching, there's actually a data structure called plugin list, where you can find these plugin descriptors. You can write code to search these. For example, VST plugin list. Let's take a look. What's in that dump? There's a name. Okay, let's detect descriptor.name contains. Let's do case insensitive. Okay. Well, let's. How about I debug my own code, right? So then it finds this, and I could ask that even for what is its key. This kind of thing will help you to identify it later. So you can play around with that on your own. The search is the important part. Okay, now the VST plugin instance is actually controlled by a language side object. So we need to make a controller, dplugin controller. It has a few parameters, but I'm just going to, since I know what synth it is, I will just put that in. Okay, simple, done, right? This object will let you open the plugin. So since I'm concentrating on instruments, I will just look at these. Since it came from the search list, I really just need kind of the last part of it. So let me go ahead and do open vital VST3. Okay, and it didn't complain. If you spelled it wrong, you might get an error message printed at this point. That's fine. Okay, so that's also fairly simple. Now, to manipulate the VST, there are a couple of graphical interfaces. There's kind of a you can ask it for a c.gui, and this is kind of it's ugly. It doesn't look like the plugin, so you'll find this very hard to use. I don't like to use it. There's another method, editor, that will open the plugin's interface, and it's Vital's a little bit slow, so it came up kind of quickly. So I like to use this to just set it up and get the patch working. You can do as you like. One thing to be aware of is that on Mac, this interface window runs in the audio thread, so this can cause glitches. You really only need it while setting up. While you're playing, you don't need the window. So so use with some caution. Okay, so that's the first kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's actually, there's not that much to it. It's just sifting these out of all the other options. Okay, so I'll just take a little bit to kind of set up a patch sort of interactively. We can use patterns to play the VST. So here's an event type VST MIDI. We tell it to use the controller. I'll just have it play some notes. I am not sure how loud this is going to be though, so let me maybe turn that down. Start it. Okay, I'll just do like a kind of really basic. Let's put on a filter. Let's unison sounds better. That's way too detuned. Okay, let's give it a little more attack, and I also like a, a little filter envelope. This is kind of a fun, soft synth. Okay, something like that. My mouse is not cooperating. Ah, that's better. Okay, something like that. We'll just use like a really, really basic instrument here. All right, stop. Okay. Now, what's next? So having set up the instrument, I mean, you don't want to do that every time when you are starting a new session, right? You don't want to build the instrument by hand. So we can also save a preset file. There are two methods for this. One of them, save preset, I'm going to not recommend that today because it will save in a system location. That's fine if you're just working on your machine, but if you need to take your project to another machine, it's nicer to have the VST patches closer to the right next to your program file. So we can use write program to do that. This file is actually already saved on disk, so I can just tell it write program. This process, now executing path, that's where this is living. So get the directory name, and I will just call this like vital saw VST preset. Done. And if we can actually look in the directory, and there it is, vital saw VST preset. Okay, so this is that's the basic setup steps. I mean, there's not much more to it than that. We can close the plugin and free the synth, which that works because I put in the envelope. Otherwise, you might want to do free. Now, how do we get back to that point? Well, it's very similar. So we can play a new so this is to get back to there. We will play the synth. Okay, we've gone up by one there. Plugin controller, talking to the synth, open the plugin, read program, and I'm just going to copy paste from that. Okay, and now if I okay, there it is. All right, so that's kind of the it's again, like looking through the help files it's quite bewildering at first, but I think you can see it's actually not that much to use it. It's really some excellent work, and it works very well. Okay, yeah, so we went through that. Okay, so now there's a couple of other things that I want to get into with the live coding framework. The 4 steps here, they're not that much, but they're also not really that convenient, especially for performance. So here is where 2005 is a long time ago, that I was thinking about how to make packages of either an instrument or a type of musical behavior so that I could just make an instance of it very easily. on stage. And so I created Chucklib, which was inspired by the Chuck operator from the Chuck programming language. I'm not using it the same way, but that does figure into it. It's a storage mechanism. So, for example, a little distracting. Let's get rid of that. So, if I open up a browser for it, you can see there are many different types of objects. There are some, there's a function library. I haven't really loaded any factories yet. Different types of events, some process prototypes that do various things. Since these are all stored globally, it's very easy to access them, and it ends up being kind of a soft class library that can be redefined on the fly. Then some years ago, I got very interested in improvisation using code, and so I created a dialect that runs in SuperCollider. It uses the SC preprocessor to translate custom statements into SC code, and this depends heavily on the kind of global storage framework. So for this one, we're really going to look at an instrument package, and this is stored in something called a factory. Factories can create either instruments or they can create musical processes. For a while, I've been using one of my classes called Voicer for note playing. There are a few reasons for that. One is that it is a voice control. So if I say that this voicer can play 10 notes at a time, it will only play 10 notes at a time. So this helps control CPU usage. It also has some features for mapping parameters to interfaces, which I like a lot. So it's a good fit here because, as I noted, we have these 4 steps to kind of get back to where you were. So I'm not going to go through everything in here, but a couple of things to note. It's basically living in a dictionary, and I included some parameters. So I could set up, for example, a default VST to open, a default program to open. But kind of the meat of it is there's a make function, and here we are going through the steps. We are making the synth. There's a little bit of tap dancing here because the mixer is not ready immediately, so we can't. But we also need the synth to be ready right now. So I actually end up creating the synth and then moving it into the mixer. Normally, you don't have to do that. But this is also part of the point of the framework. This is hidden in this definition, and I don't have to think about it again. Right? And we create the plugin controller. And then there's, because it takes time to open the instrument and time to open the program, I'm doing some things to synchronize it, and then create the voicer here. So that's all we need, and I'm just going to open that up. Okay, let me also load up the live coding framework. That's that is something that's been discussed in some of my other videos. Okay. So, if you're familiar with SuperCollider's object-oriented framework, we define classes and then we create instances of the classes in order to use them. And this follows the same model. The factory is kind of a generic prototype. We make an instance of it to do the thing, right? So there's the kind of original Chucklib syntax where we quote unquote chuck the factory into a container, and we can also write, we can override parameters here. For improvisation, I use a custom syntax to make that even shorter. And so right now I'll just use the live code way. So let's write that. Make an instance of VST VC, and I'll just call it VST. I want to use vital. Now, as you can imagine, on stage, this is not really convenient. I would have some other setup to make this a bit easier, but not right now. One thing that I did, see, because it's a package, I can do things like if it is not an absolute path, then we look in the same directory as the code file. So I don't have to spell everything out. I can just write vital saw VST preset. And I'm also going to add to this, I want to add to it a note player, a melody player, which I'll just call VST. Do I want to give it a, yeah, I'll give it a parameter. Okay, and you can see like same thing that it did pop up update display. So that seems to have gone pretty well. Okay, so that was all of these steps to reload, but done in one statement because it's programmed into a package that does all the work for you. I'll just throw this out there as it's a kind of interesting for programmers kind of thing, I guess. You know, object-oriented programming has been very popular for many years and is actually now starting to come under some fire. But this idea of polymorphism, or the idea of objects that can substitute for each other, is very, very powerful and really helps me here. So I am, you know, kind of at the top level, I'm producing events in SuperCollider. And then these events are passing information to the voicer, to the note player and note controller. The normal usage is that this will play a synth on the server, kind of a normal SC synth def. But, you know, maybe a year or two ago when I was looking at integrating VCV rack into my setup, I added a new type of voicer node called MIDI voicer node, which translates the requirement into MIDI messages to send out. So that's one substitution. Instead of a synth, we can use MIDI. Here's yet one more substitution. Now VSTPlugin has a MIDI proxy that is interface compatible with MIDI out. So then this MIDI voicer node can play either a MIDI instrument or a VST plugin. And this kind of shows some of what can happen when when the interfaces are reasonably well designed. Then you can substitute these objects and get a lot of flexibility kind of for free. All right, let's get a sequence going, and I will do the kind of techno way of polyrhythm. So let's play 16th notes. If you're not clear what I'm doing here, I have some other videos explaining my live coding framework. Okay. I also want to play in, let's play Dorian. Okay. Let's set a tempo. Okay. No, let's not slur there. Let's slur down to that. Okay, and we should start playing it. I can control some of the parameters. I'm going to pull this down. Because of the filter, it's a little bit quiet. Not sure why it's so quiet. Anyway, let's go on. Oh, that's the wrong editor. Okay, one thing that you know is be careful about kind of stale objects. It's not actually C that we are using right now. We're using CV envelope VST controller. This plugin controller. Okay, so that got a little more real than I thought there. This is one thing to note with, VSTPlugin is very hard to control what the plugins are going to do. So, we can't always promise absolute stability. So I'm going to try to get back to where we were. And I think actually I wasn't recording any of that anyway. Let me see. Okay. Well, so I'm going to try to reload these things. Let's reload that prototype. Reload the VST. And instead of doing it while it's playing, let me try it again. Okay, that's better. Sometimes you have to be careful about what it's doing. Okay, let's set that. I also want to, for the sake of the recording, target outbus set to main recorder. So let's have that. Okay, I guess I will have to adjust the volume on this later. So there are a couple of things I wanted to do. Like one is, for example, slurs. We can handle slurs in the standard way. Let's make it a mono synth and legato and okay. I can't hear that very well, but this should do the kind of standard baseline sort of thing. Now, the other thing that I wanted to look at is, let's try to get up the, oh, wow. Okay, yeah, that's loaded down. So my reason for doing that is because we have like a control panel over here. Something that okay, yeah, let's stop that. Controlling parameters is a really important thing for performance, and this is another place where some kind of object-oriented design really helped me. I already have a structure to handle parameter controls. It's basically I'm syncing the control values over to a control bus. So the notes that the voicer is playing can just map to the control bus and pick up value changes anytime. But it turns out because this object will send a message every time its value changes, I can use another object to pick that up and send MIDI across. So, and the way that's going to work for this is, let's see, I can hit a couple of shortcut keys and put the mixer in there. I wonder if it's because that level is so far down. Anyway, so I can tell it to map global. Let's do like a filter frequency. And we need to give it a range. Since we're going over to MIDI, I will just give it a MIDI range. Then, so that's just kind of the standard one. Then let's connect MIDI out. Here, this is kind of a work in progress. The syntax is not very convenient for on stage, but yes, there is my VST MIDI proxy. So we'll use CC0. I will just pick some controller number. Okay. Why did this? Okay. And yes, now it's picked this up. So I can even take, let's drag this up. I'll put this on a slider. Right. Then we need to connect this over to the VST parameters. So we still have this interface. And what I'm going to do is let's put this macro control onto the filter frequency. Macro controls are, play it again. So I should be able to, let me try to turn this up. Okay, that helps. Also, if you hear that reverb, the reverb is coming from SuperCollider. That's not a Vital reverb. Okay, so that's working. Stop that. So in Vital, the way we do is we learn MIDI assignment. Now I'll go over to the controller, and you can actually see now that it's synced up across. So SuperCollider is just sending MIDI exactly like a DAW would do, and Vital is picking that up. And now if I'm using this in a show, I can start the process. This is totally integrated. Even, and here's a feature that I actually really like in this is if I have a little snippet to automate, let's do, noise 3, range 0 and 27, because that's what we're doing. Okay, and so what we have is an LFO that is running in the SC server, and the language is picking up these value changes, syncing them back to the control object, and then the control object is sending a notification that it changed, and that causes the MIDI message to be sent. And so now we have this is following an LFO that's running in the SC server. And so that's where things kind of get to be more fun. So I need to do a little more work to package up the controller mapping, but this can be, I think this can be quite powerful on stage. So I will basically wrap up with that. At least the intro to VSTPlugin, I hope, will be useful to a lot of you, and maybe the rest of it will inspire some other programming practices for performance. So, okay, thanks for listening. Bye.